The first time I saw Lena, she was holding a room of 200 people in the palm of her hand without saying a word. It was a charity gala, one of those events where the air smells like rented orchids and expensive perfume. I was there as a +1 for a colleague, feeling like a sequin on a burlap sack. And then there she was, across the crowded room, a still point in the turning world. She wasn't the most beautiful woman there, but she had a gravity, a quiet, humming intensity that drew every eye. She wore a simple black dress, but she wore it like a suit of armor. When she finally stepped up to the podium to speak, her voice, clear and warm as a bell, didn't ask for attention. It commanded it. She spoke about empowerment, about community, and for a few minutes, even I, a cynical data architect who believed in nothing but binary truth, believed her. That was her gift. That was the poison. 3 years later, I was standing in our apartment, holding a bottle of champagne I'd just uncorked, watching the foam spill over my fingers and onto the polished concrete floor. Lena was twirling, a blur of white silk and delighted laughter, her phone held aloft to capture the moment. 100,000, she sang out, her voice pitched for the microphone she wasn't yet holding. Can you believe it, Alex? 100,000 real, beautiful souls. I believed it. I'd helped build the spreadsheet that tracked them. It's incredible, Lena, I said, my voice flat even to my own ears. I set the bottle down and wiped my hand on my jeans. The cold, sticky sensation lingered. She stopped spinning and floated towards me, her eyes gleaming with a triumph that felt both immense and entirely separate from me. She took the bottle from the counter and poured 2 glasses, handing one to me. This is just the beginning, Alex. The brand deal is locked, the partnership. This changes everything.
Does it? I asked, the question out before I could filter it. Her smile didn't falter, but it tightened at the edges, becoming a performer's smile. Oh, don't be like that. This is for us, for our future. She clinked her glass against mine with a sharp, definitive ping. A hand on her waist, tilting my chin towards the ring light she'd set up earlier. It was a familiar ritual. Prop placement. I looked at my own face in the preview screen of her phone. At 35, I looked competent, stable, a little tired around the eyes. A good supporting character. A reliable set piece. Smile, Alex, she coached, her own smile a radiant, flawless thing. Think of our trip to Maine, the lobster rolls. I thought of Maine. I thought of the rain sheeting down, of us holed up in a rented cabin, of her complaining about the Wi-Fi signal, of me reading a book while she filmed 5 different cozy, off-the-grid reels in a row. I thought of the fight we'd had when I'd suggested we just go for a walk without the phone. The camera shutter sound, artificial and crisp, snapped me back to the present. Perfect, she murmured, already scrolling through the takes, her thumb a blur. #blessed, #relationship goals. I took a long swallow of champagne. It tasted like vinegar and ambition.
It hadn't always been like this. In the beginning, her online presence was a quirky side project, a modern hobby like sourdough starters or hydroponics. She worked in PR, so it made sense. I was the tech-literate boyfriend. Of course I helped. I showed her how to color grade her videos, how to use a lavalier mic for cleaner audio, how to structure a script for maximum impact. I liked it. It felt collaborative. I was building something with her. I'd watch her practice her lines in the bathroom mirror, her brow furrowed in concentration, and I'd feel a surge of affection for this driven, brilliant woman. The shift was tectonic. So slow, I didn't feel the continents of our relationship moving until a chasm had opened up between us. It started with the pronouns. I slowly replaced we. Her journey became the central narrative. My contributions became the support system she was so grateful for, a vague, faceless entity. Then came the stories. I remember the first time I saw one. We were lying in bed, a Sunday morning, the light soft through the blinds. She was giggling, typing away on her phone. "What's so funny?" I asked, nuzzling her neck. She said, "Just sharing a little lesson." She turned the screen towards me. It was a beautifully designed graphic, soft pastels and an elegant font. A gentle reminder, you are not responsible for managing your partner's emotional laziness. This weekend, my boyfriend forgot we had plans to visit my family. Again, it's not forgetfulness, loves. It's a choice, and you deserve someone who chooses you enthusiastically.
The comments were a river of fire emojis and affirmations. Yes, Queen. Preach. Why are men like this? My blood ran cold. The forgotten plans? We'd had a massive, stressful system migration at work that Friday. I'd been up for 36 hours straight. I'd stumbled home at 8 p.m., my eyes crossing with exhaustion, and Lena had taken one look at me and said, "You look terrible. We're not going. I'll tell Mom you're sick." She'd ordered takeout and rubbed my shoulders. "Lena," I said, my voice tight, "that's not what happened." She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes still on the climbing likes. "Oh, come on, Alex. It's just content. I have to be relatable. People connect with struggle. It's not about you, it's about the archetype." The archetype of me being an inconsiderate jerk? "Don't be so literal," she said, finally putting her phone down and turning to me with a sweet, placating smile. She traced a finger down my chest. "It's storytelling. You know that. It's my brand." Her brand. It was a phrase that began to coat everything, a layer of lacquer that made reality slippery. The time I was quiet at a party because I was worrying about my mother's health scare became when your partner gives you the silent treatment in public and you have to carry the conversation. The time I wanted to spend a bonus on a savings bond instead of a luxury vacation became navigating financial values with a partner who doesn't share your ambition for a rich life. I started arguing. "That's a lie, Lena. A deliberate misrepresentation." "It's an interpretation," she would counter, her tone patient, as if explaining basic arithmetic to a child. "From my emotional perspective, that's exactly what it felt like. My content is about my truth. Your truth is making me the villain to an audience of thousands." "If the shoe fits," she'd sometimes mutter under her breath, then quickly cover it with a laugh. "I'm kidding. God, Alex, you're so sensitive lately. You need to understand the business." The business. Our home became her soundstage. Our arguments became potential script material. Our love life, or the increasing lack thereof, became a topic she'd hint at with mournful yet strong posts about holding space for yourself when intimacy fades. I'd lie next to her at night, the blue glow of her phone painting her face in an otherworldly light, and feel a profound, aching loneliness. I was dating a phantom, a curated image, and the real Lena was being consumed by it. The breaking point, the moment the last vestige of us shattered, was the night of her brand partnership announcement party. Our apartment was packed with people I barely knew, other influencers, PR reps, a photographer from a minor online magazine. The air was thick with the smell of hairspray and ambition. I was trapped in a corner by a woman with unnervingly white teeth who called herself a manifestation coach. "You must be so proud of Lena. She's such an inspiration. And you,
The supportive rock behind the queen. We love to see it. I felt the hot, sharp pressure behind my eyes. Supportive rock. A prop. A stagehand in the theater of her life. My gaze found Lena across the room. She was holding court, a glass in one hand, her phone in the other, filming the scene, her laugh a perfect tinkling sound that cut through the din. She was radiant, she was triumphant, and she was a complete stranger.
In that moment, something in me broke. Not with a scream, but with a quiet, final click. The love I had felt, the devotion, the need to fight for us, it evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hollow clarity. The anger didn't boil, it crystallized into something hard, sharp, and patient. I stopped arguing. I stopped trying to explain my hurt. When she'd come to me with a new script, I'd just nod and say, "Sounds good." I stopped helping with the filming, pleading overwork. A strange peace descended over our relationship. She seemed relieved, interpreting my silence as acceptance, my detachment as finally matching her energy. She was free to build her empire without the nagging conscience in the corner. But I had started paying attention. Really paying attention. Her content had evolved. The vague, relatable posts were now bolstered by real testimonials, screenshots of DM conversations with followers, emails, text messages, all carefully anonymized, but presented as raw, unfiltered proof of her impact. She'd show them to me, her eyes bright with pride. She'd say, "Look at this, Alex," pointing to a screenshot of a tearful message from a follower thanking Lena for saving her from a toxic relationship. "This is why I do it. This is real." I'd look, and I'd remember. I'd remember her, a week prior, frowning at her screen. "This DM is so poorly written. The sentiment is good, but the grammar is a mess. It lacks punch." And I'd watched her, my own heart a cold stone in my chest, as she'd open a photo editing app and meticulously tweaked the text, changing to, "He make me feel like crap," to, "He systematically dismantled my self-worth," crafting a more dramatic, more shareable pain. She wasn't just telling stories anymore. She was manufacturing evidence. And she was so deep inside her own narrative, she no longer saw the line between curation and fraud. One night, she fell asleep on the sofa, her laptop open on the coffee table, bathing her sleeping face in a soft white light. A spreadsheet was open, a roster of brand contacts, campaign deadlines, and payment schedules. Next to it was a folder, innocuously named Archive. I didn't move. I just watched the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. This was the woman I had loved. This was the architect of my public humiliation. The two images wouldn't reconcile. The hollow space inside me filled with a cold, clear purpose. I stood up. The floorboards didn't creak. I was a ghost in my own home. I carefully disconnected her external hard drive, the one where she kept all her raw footage and original files. I took it to my study, plugged it into my own machine, and began to work. I didn't delete a thing. I didn't alter a single file. I was an archivist, a historian of a coming catastrophe. I copied everything. The original, unedited screenshots, the raw video takes where she'd flub a line and curse, the drafts of her heartfelt captions, written and rewritten for maximum algorithmic appeal. I compiled it all with a data architect's meticulous precision, organizing it into a clear, undeniable timeline of fabrication. I saved it to an encrypted cloud drive she knew nothing about. Then I wiped my fingerprints from the hard drive, physically and digitally, and reconnected it. I returned to the living room. She was still asleep, a tiny smile playing on her lips, dreaming, no doubt, of virality. I looked at her, and I felt nothing but the cold weight of the truth in my pocket. She had built her kingdom on a foundation of carefully edited lies, and I was the only one who had the blueprints to the fault lines. The breakup was a masterclass in performance art. She scheduled it. Of course she scheduled it. A Tuesday evening, because her analytics showed midweek engagement was better for vulnerable, raw content. "Alex, we need to talk," she said, her voice soft and brimming with a rehearsed sadness. She was already wearing a soft, cream-colored sweater that made her look both fragile and ethereal. The ring light was on, casting a perfect shadowless halo around her. Her phone was discreetly propped on a shelf, a tiny red recording light glowing. I almost laughed. The sheer audacity of it was breathtaking. I had anticipated this. I had practiced my own lines. She gave the speech. It was full of phrases like sacred journey, vibrational alignment, and releasing with love. She talked about how we'd grown in different directions, how she would always cherish what we had. It was the script for 1,000 breakup videos, and she delivered it flawlessly. A single perfect tear tracing a path down her cheek. She was the star of her own bittersweet romance, and I was the beloved extra being written out of the show. When she finished, she looked at me, expectantly. This was my cue. The angry outburst, the begging, more content. I gave her a small, gentle smile. "I understand, Lena," I said, my voice calm, steady. "I wish you nothing but the best. Truly." The confusion in her eyes was the first real, unscripted emotion I'd seen from her in months. It was more satisfying than any shout I could have mustered. She blinked, the tear now seeming out of place. "Oh, Alex, thank you. That's so mature." "We had some good times," I continued, the platitude feeling like a weapon in my mouth. "I'll always be grateful for them." I stood up, walked over to her, and gave her a brief, chaste hug. I could feel the tension in her shoulders. She was thrown. I had refused my role. I had declined to be the villain in her finale. "I'll be out by the end of the week," I said, and I walked out of the circle of light, out of the frame, and out of her life as quietly as a ghost. I didn't block her number. I didn't unfollow her. I didn't post a sad quote or a triumphant, free at last selfie. I became a void. I moved into a small, quiet apartment with a view of the city skyline. I went to work. I came home. I cooked simple meals for one. The silence was a balm. It was the first time in years my thoughts were my own, not potential narrative fodder. And I watched. I watched her posts in the days following the breakup. The heartbroken but hopeful video, where she sat in her now half-empty apartment, talking about the courage it takes to choose yourself. The comments were a flood of support. "You're so strong. He didn't deserve you. Your real king is coming." I watched it all with the detached interest of a scientist observing a lab specimen. There was no anger left. Anger is hot and messy. What I felt was cold, clean, and precise. It was the feeling of a chess player who has seen 10 moves ahead. I gave it a month. Let her settle into her new reality. Let her believe she had navigated the transition perfectly. Her follower count climbed. She landed another brand deal, this one for a line of artisanal candles that promised to ignite the flame of self-worth within. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. Then one Tuesday morning, sitting at my stark, clean desk with a cup of black coffee,
I opened my encrypted drive. It was time to begin. I started with the smallest of the 3 brands she was currently working with, a new, ethically minded skincare company called Aurea. Their whole angle was transparency and authenticity. Perfect.
I crafted the email with the care of a poet. It needed to be polite, professional, and utterly devastating. Dear Aurea team, I hope this email finds you well. My name is Alex, and I was previously in a long-term relationship with Lena. I was an early supporter of her online work and often assisted with the technical side of her content creation. In the spirit of your company's valued commitment to authenticity, I felt compelled to reach out. I recently noticed some discrepancies in the testimonials Lena is using to promote your excellent products. It appears that in her enthusiasm, she may have edited some of the original messages from her followers to enhance their dramatic impact. I've attached a few side-by-side comparisons for your review. The original messages are on the left, sourced from files she shared with me during our relationship. The published versions are on the right. I'm sure this was an oversight, but given the importance of genuine user testimonials in your marketing, I thought you would want to be aware. Best regards, Alex. The attachments were meticulously prepared. 3 comparisons. In one, a follower's simple, "Thanks for the advice," had been transformed into, "You literally saved my life from the abyss." In another, the dates on a DM chain had been altered to make it seem like Lena's advice had spurred an immediate, life-changing decision, when in reality, the conversation had dragged on for weeks. The edits were subtle, but when placed side by side, they were undeniable. They painted a picture of a person who didn't just share stories, but manufactured them. I took a deep breath, the city sprawling before my window, and hit send. The sound was quieter than I had imagined, just a soft digital whoosh. A pebble dropped into a pond miles away. I did the same for the other 2 brands, a tech company selling productivity apps and the candle company. Each email was slightly tailored, highlighting the specific ways her fabricated testimonials misaligned with their brand values. Community for the tech company, inner truth for the candles. Then I waited. The first response came from Aurea within 48 hours. It was brief and icy. Mr. Alex, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We are launching an internal review of our collaboration with Miss Lena, and will be pausing all associated campaigns pending its outcome. Sincerely, Legal and Compliance, Aurea. A thrill, cold and sharp, went through me. Not joy, not triumph. It was the satisfaction of a complex equation finally solving itself.
The dominoes began to fall silently. I saw the sponsored posts for Aurea vanish from her feed. Then the tech company's logo disappeared from her bio. A week later, the candle company was gone. There were no announcements, no dramatic scenes. It was a quiet, corporate exodus. Lena's content became frantic. She posted more frequently, her smiles a little too wide, her eyes a little too bright. She started a new series, Rebuilding After the Storm, talking about business challenges with a vague, spiritual spin. But the brands were gone. The professional scaffolding of her influence was being dismantled, brick by brick. It was then that the clarification video appeared. She sat in the same spot she'd broken up with me, but the lighting was harsher now. She looked tired. "Hello, my loves," she began.
her voice trembling authentically for the first time in living memory. I need to speak to you from the heart. I've always prided myself on my authenticity, but recently I've been made aware that in my passion to create impactful stories, I may have overstepped. Some of the testimonials I shared were edited for clarity and narrative flow. I never meant to mislead anyone. My only goal was to inspire. She started to cry. Real tears this time. They were tears of fear. The comments, once a tide of adoration, were now a battlefield. Edited for clarity? You lied. This is fraud. You sold us a fake reality. I feel so betrayed. Don't listen to the haters, Queen. We all make mistakes.
But the supporters were drowned out. The narrative had turned. Her follower count, that sacred number she worshipped, began to drop. Not in a trickle, but in a steady, sickening hemorrhage. 5,000. 10,000. She was bleeding out in public. My phone vibrated on the desk. A single text lit up the screen. It was from Lena. "Did you do this?" 3 words. They contained a universe of fury, of fear, of dawning, horrified comprehension. I looked at the message for a long time. The city below me was lighting up as dusk fell, a million windows glowing like pixels on a screen, each one a story, each one a truth, or a lie, or something in between. I picked up my phone. My fingers were steady. I typed out my reply, the final line of our 3-year story. "You built your brand on stories, Lena. I just made sure people read the real ones." I didn't wait for a response. I blocked the number. I closed the laptop. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the vast, indifferent city. It was over. I didn't feel proud. Pride is for accomplishments, for creating something. I had deconstructed something. I had taken a flawed, beautiful, and ultimately corrupt structure and reduced it to its constituent parts of truth and lies. It was necessary work. It was just work. What I felt was clean. The feeling settled over me in the days and weeks that followed. It was the feeling of walking out of a stuffy, over-perfumed room into the cold, sharp air of a winter morning. It was the silence in my apartment, a silence that was no longer lonely, but spacious and mine. The ghost was gone. The constant low-grade hum of anxiety, the fear of what story she would spin next, what part of me would be co-opted for her narrative, was extinguished. I watched the rest of her downfall from a distance, with no more emotional investment than I'd give to a news report about a stock market correction. Her apology video was picked up by a gossip site, then another. The story had legs. Influencer caught faking fan testimonials. The word fake was a brand of its own, and it stuck to her like tar. Her management company, the one she'd been so proud of, dropped her. The speaking engagements dried up. Her Instagram became a sad, desperate gallery. The perfectly composed shots were replaced with grainy, emotional selfies, long, rambling captions about cancel culture and the toxicity of the internet. She was trying to pivot, to become a martyr, but the audience had moved on. They'd consumed the story of Lena, the empowered queen, and found it wanting. They were already off finding a new truth to devour. About 6 months after I'd sent those emails, I was scrolling through a professional networking site when her profile popped up in a "people you may know" suggestion. Her profile picture was a simple, professional headshot.
Her headline read, "Public Relations Specialist." She was back to where she started, before the ring lights, before the six-figure followers, before she decided my love was raw material for her content.
I felt a flicker of something then. Not pity, exactly. It was more like the acknowledgement of a natural law. What goes up must come down. She had built her tower too high, on too soft a ground. I closed the tab. She was part of my past, a closed chapter. The data was archived, the case was resolved. My friends, the ones who had known, who had seen her subtle digs and watched me slowly retreat into myself, took me out for a drink. They slapped me on the back, called me a stone-cold legend. They wanted the gritty details, the story of my revenge. I gave them a watered-down version. I told them I'd just pointed out the truth to the right people. I didn't describe the cold, meticulous months of planning. I didn't talk about the hollow feeling of watching the woman I'd loved become a stranger, or the even hollower feeling of dismantling her. They wouldn't have understood. They wanted a tale of fiery vengeance, of a wronged man rising up. My story wasn't like that. It was quiet, patient, and utterly devoid of passion. It was an execution, not a battle. The one thing they all said, the thing that stuck with me, was, "You must feel so vindicated." I thought about that word, vindicated. It implies a restoration, a proving of one's innocence to the world. But the world had never known I was involved. My name was never in the articles. My emails were confidential. This wasn't about the world knowing my innocence. It was about me knowing the truth. It was about restoring the balance of reality in my own mind. She hadn't just betrayed my trust, she had tried to erase my reality and replace it with her own more convenient narrative. My revenge wasn't about hurting her. It was about reasserting the primacy of truth. I had forced her to stand under the same brilliant, unforgiving light she had used to blind everyone else. She wasn't able to bear the glare.
Now, a year later, the feeling of cleanliness has matured into a quiet confidence. I go on dates occasionally. I'm careful, guarded. I look for tells, for the flicker of a performer in their eyes. But I'm also more myself, the self that isn't a character in anyone else's story. I was the silent villain in her success story, so I became the silent architect of her downfall. There's a symmetry to it that I find deeply satisfying. It wasn't a happy ending. Those are for fairy tales, and our story was anything but. It was a just ending. And in a world curated for likes and built on filters, that's the only kind of ending that truly matters. I feel clean, I feel quiet, and most of all, I feel real. What's the most unexpected plot twist you've ever experienced in a relationship? The line between perception and reality can be thinner than we think. Subscribe for more deep dives into the stories that shape us.